Julio Alfredo Jaramillo Laurido was a notable Ecuadorian singer and recording artist who performed throughout Latin America, achieving great fame for his renditions of boleros, valses, pasillos, tangos, and rancheras. Having recorded more than 4,000 songs throughout his career, his most famous song was perhaps Nuestro Juramento, written by Puerto Rican composer Benito de Jesús.Jaramillo, recorded with many other noteworthy Latin American artists including Puerto Rican singer Daniel Santos, fellow Ecuadorian singer Olimpo Cárdenas, and Colombian singer Alci Acosta. Biography. Childhood. Jaramillo was born on October 1, 1935, in Guayaquil, Ecuador. His parents moved to Guayaquil from the town of Machachi in search for a better life. He had two siblings, a sister who died at the age of 5 and a brother named Pepe. The neighbor Ignacio Topan to let the kids play with his musical instruments, and taught them to play the guitar. Julio later made his own guitar out of bamboo so that he could practice more. Attending the school led by Francisco Garcia Avilés was probably the final push towards Julio's musical career. By age 15, his brother Pepe had had some success as an artist, but later left music to study philosophy in Colombia. Julio wasn't as disciplined, but still wanted to be an artist, like his brother. By the age of 17, Jaramillo was becoming famous for having a beautiful and warm voice, and participated in radio programs at El Condor radio station. In 1950 he joined with two friends to form a trio and got to visit the provinces of Esmeraldas and Manabí. On one occasion he was forced to return to his job as a shoemaker to survive. Despite the criticisms, penalties, tears and entreaties of his mother, he was unable to leave his bohemian lifestyle and revelers. Adult life and marriages. At 18, Julio left home, rented an apartment with Irene, with whom he had a baby. Sadly, the baby died after 8 months. At this time he worked as a shoemaker, but still insisting unsuccessfully on pursuing a career as a musician. He was often seen at a place called La Lagartera, serenading people for tips. At La Lagartera, Julio met other musicians. It was during these years that he came to know Odilina Sanchez at the local radio El Triunfo. He fell in love with Odilina and left Irene for her. Together they had a son named Francisco, born March 9, 1955. However, before the age of 20 he married Maria Eudocia Rivera, who was at the time 4 months pregnant with his child. Still, he kept an ongoing love affair with Odilina. Back in Guayaquil, he never stopped being the kid from the block. Humble, friendly, bohemian, generous, and joyful. On Channel 4 he started a TV show, in which he performed frequently and recorded new songs. However, a life of excesses and lack of control affected his health, which got progressively worse. Professional career. With the recording of his first album, My Poor Dear Mother, which was a duet with Frisia Saavedra, his name began to be well known. This was followed by the Peruvian-style waltz song called Esposa, a duet with Carlos Rubira Infante. In 1956, the Peruvian-style waltz Fatalidad marked his breakthrough. It's something between a Peruvian waltz and an Ecuadorian pasillo. Quote, "It was a huge success from the very beginning. 6,000 copies were sold within a week. By the end of 1956 he had produced a dozen albums under the Onyx label. In 1959, he moved to TV and also the movies. His first film was Mala Mulia, or Wicked Woman. His gained international recognition after the bolero Nuestro Juramento, and he made several tours in Latin America. He began a journey through Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, Argentina, Uruguay, and Chile. The Mexican label Peerless became interested, and sent him on a tour of Peru and Chile. In Colombia, Colombia, he met up with his brother Pepe, who had previously emigrated to that nation. When not on tour, he performed in movie theaters in Guayaquil. It was customary at the time to present music shows before showing the main feature. Because of his immense popularity, he started to do shows on Saturdays and Sundays, which later became 2 daily shows, 7 days a week. Upon returning to his country, he was arrested and forced to do military service. Returning to civilian life in 1960, he continued his career, reaching sellout performances of up to 4 consecutive months at the Guayaquil Guayas Theatre. He also had a part in the Ecuadorian movie Fiebre de Juventud, Romance en Ecuador, and one other in Argentina. In 1965 he settled in Venezuela and completed successful tours of Mexico, Puerto Rico, and Central America. He also recorded duets with Daniel Santos, Olimpo Cárdenas, and Alci Acosta. His last international tour was held in the United States and Canada. The scandals of his turbulent life were often also a source of news. He was imprisoned on several occasions, almost always due to women's issues and non-compliance with the juvenile court. Besides being married 5 times, Julio had children with other women, with estimates of up to 28. Never denied his humble origins, he was always very generous, lavish with his friends, and a prototype of machismo from his early upbringing. Operation. On his return to Ecuador in 1975, tired, prematurely aged and corroded by cirrhosis, he was booed at a performance in his hometown because his voice was no longer the same. In his last years of his life, Julio Jaramillo had a radio program at Crystal Radio entitled The J Hour, whose commercial time did not even generate enough money for him to make a decent living. During the early days of the month of February 1978, Julio Jaramillo underwent a highly risky medical procedure to remove gallstones. The procedure was successful, but during the post-operative period he was imprudent enough to pull the probes connected to his body. This caused a peritonitis which forced doctors to perform a second operation. However, because of the years as a bohemian and neglect, his body did not respond as expected. Jaramillo died at the relatively young age of 42. His remains were given a farewell like no other person has known in Guayaquil. It is estimated that there were about 250,000 Ecuadorians at his funeral. His level of popularity in Ecuador could be compared to Frank Sinatra's in the United States, Pedro Infant's in Mexico, or Carlos Gardel's in Argentina. Since 1993, his birthday has been commemorated as the national holiday for the Paseo, Dia del Paseo Ecuatoriano. Notable songs performed. According to Spotify, Julio Jaramillo in Spotify songs composed by Julio Jaramillo.